Now he's getting a lot of praise in defeat Wilder, he is. But what's the truth? He cherry-picked Fury initially, rather than fighting for undisputed, and it's backfired on him. The truth is, he didn't win none of the fights, and this was to get leverage on Anthony Joshua. And all he has now is a weak resume, and he's never fought to unify a belt. Never. Like I said, Wilder entered the leverage tactics with Tyson Fury in 2018 like they were getting married. No. Only one of you is going to benefit out of these leverage tactics. That's Tyson Fury. And look, man, let me just keep it real. I've never heard of a trilogy. You know, we could even talk about the ones that HBO, not so much manufactured, but immortalized, like Gatti and Ward. I've never heard of a trilogy or even a 4-fight series like Sadler versus Pep. Like Willie only won one of them, but if you go look up some old boxing scribes, they will talk about the one fight that Willie won because he supposedly put on a masterclass. It's not online, but he lost 3, but he did win 1. And that fight is remembered. I've never heard of this big 4-fight series or a trilogy where one man hasn't won one of the fights. Wilder hasn't won one of the fights, but it's supposedly one of the great trilogies of all time. You could argue that Tyson won all 3 fights. Now you've got guys like Ishe Smith and Andre Ward talking about Tyson Fury shouldn't take his mandatory defense against Dillian Whyte. Why are they campaigning for a man to not get his mandatory shot? And they've both been in the ring waiting for their big opportunities. Why would they do that? I'm still baffled how Fury's win is so groundbreaking, he doesn't have to fight his mandatories no more, according to some people. And it's Eddie Hearn. It's Eddie Hearn. Now, I'm not saying Ishe Smith has a personal gripe with Eddie Hearn. I think that's just Ishe's opinion. But Andre Ward, Eddie Hearn. I think America see Tyson Fury as their property now. They built him up, and we don't care about no stadium fight with Dillian in Britain. He needs to fight Usyk in America. And whether us as Dillian fans or Brits like it or not, they're going to have a huge say. And they're going to use whatever political sway they have not to let Dillian get no mandatory shot. But Andre Ward, I'm going to try and give you a theory on why I believe is the bad blood between him and Eddie. He wanted that rematch with Carl Froch. And Froch wanted to take the fight. But Froch wanted it in Nottingham where he beat Lucien Boutte. Andre Ward wanted to fight in Wembley because he saw Carl Froch do 80,000 against George Groves. Now, he felt disrespected by Carl Froch because Carl Froch said, "You're boring and you're unknown in the UK. It doesn't work like that you can just take the plane over here and fill out Wembley. Nobody knows you." And you know Froch's mouth already. And Ward felt disrespected. And Eddie himself said, Froch wants the rematch, but financially it's not beneficial. Basically saying Andre is not a big draw. And I don't think Andre appreciates that because he said the only reason he was fighting Paul Smith on his comeback was because he felt disrespected by Carl Froch, not wanting to make the fight at Wembley. But it's not really up to Carl Froch. It's up to Sky and Matchroom and all the people have to pay him his purse. I mean, Froch is feisty. But was he wrong at the time? Because Ward was just getting ready to fight Paul Smith after a near 2-year layoff while he was in that legal situation with Goosen. And Eddie said, yeah, we'll make the match. We could make the match, but it's going to be at Nottingham. Basically saying that Ward is not a big draw, not a big enough draw to fill out Wembley. Eddie went on to say stuff like Carl Froch versus Triple G is Wembley Stadium worthy. I just got a feeling that Ward has carried that with him and has a little animosity towards Eddie. He has animosity towards Carl Froch, but Froch ain't a promoter. And I think about it now, him saying he could beat Anthony Joshua in a fight, and maybe he genuinely believes that, but I think he just wanted to take a shot at Eddie more than Anthony Joshua. That's what I feel. I mean, this guy wouldn't even fight Adonis Stevenson to top all the belts of cruiser. And you're going to fight Anthony Joshua? And before you say I made a typo, back in the day they used to call light heavy cruiser. At least in the UK they did. He really wanted that Wembley fight with Froch. You know, he had to satisfy with fighting Paul Smith instead. But if that's why he is mad, he has to keep it real though. He won the Super 6 tournament, won 2 belts. He wouldn't go to Canada to fight Butte because Butte was a big draw in Canada, and apart from Oakland, Wood wasn't really a draw like that. And so rather than tie up the belt with Butte, that would have took him to 3 scraps. Carl Froch, Sky, MATCHROOM, they put up the money, and Butte went to Nottingham, and Froch got a strap back. He's got the IBF belt now. And Froch didn't look back after that. He fought most of that tournament on the road in America, and now he stayed in Britain. And that culminated in the 80,000 attendance for the George Groves rematch. Froch actually became a bigger draw than Andre Ward. And I think Ward resents that. Probably resents Eddie a little. That's what I believe. So now he seems to want to take a swipe at any moves Eddie's trying to make in the game. But, you know, telling Tyson Fury that he shouldn't take the Dillian fight, which is a great legacy fight for him in this country. Now, maybe that don't mean much to Fury right now because he's on this American roller coaster right now. But that's a big, big domestic fight for him. Not a domestic, well, a domestic fight, but a world title fight. Huge. Understandably, you know, not making light of it at all, but I think boxing left Andre a little bitter. Like I said, he left a lot of food on the table at 168, and Carl Froch came back into it. In fact, Carl ended up with 2 scraps, didn't he? IBF and Ward's WBA belt. Froch had one of the lower tier WBA belts. Ward had the full strap. However, Froch eventually got hold of the full strap when Ward moved up to 175. You know, he couldn't get that fight with Gennady Golovkin. In fact, Golovkin said, yeah, he'll fight Froch at 168, but he won't fight Andre Ward. Now, a lot of that was because they were a bit shook of Ward's ability. We know that. Ward was a good fighter. But nevertheless, Ward felt like he was entitled to more. He was entitled to a Wembley fight and a big fight with Golovkin, but these fights never materialized. But at the same time, left a lot of food on the table, should have fought Butte. That would have been a big fight. That would have been a big fight. Why did he let Carl Froch get back in the game with the Butte fight? He didn't fight Robert Stieglitz for the WBO belt at 168 either. And obviously, he amassed 3 scraps at 175 when he took on Kovalev. I thought he lost the first fight. I really did. The second fight, he won by stoppage, but people would talk about the dick punches. And then he left the WBC belt on the table with Adonis Stevenson and retired. It seemed like a strange retirement to me. And I'm not just saying that now. I was saying it back then. I wanted him to beat Kovalev, but he lost the first fight. I've got the post-fight video up. I had him losing. I'm thinking a lot of this has got to do with Eddie. And maybe because he left a lot of food on the table, maybe he wants other fighters to do that so they don't eclipse him. I don't know. Seems weird. I don't trust the WBC. There's still a little time left before Dillian is mandated to fight Tyson Fury, because Sullivan has gave Tyson Fury 30 days to type a fight with Alexander Usyk, but Usyk is contracted to fight AJ. Dillian needs to be on his game, and there's no guarantee he beats Otto Wallin. I'm hoping he does, but there's no guarantee. And I've just got, I don't trust the WBC. They may conspire to keep that belt out of the UK. They may well, or at least out of Eddie Hearn and DAZN's hands. But here's what I'm not getting, man, from the Tyson Fury fans. Now, for those who think that I'm a big hater, but right now, he has way more momentum than Anthony Joshua. He does. And I've got no problem people saying he's number one. But the way they say it is like, yeah, he's number one, but he doesn't need to go for undisputed or fight his mandatories. That's just totally bollocks. When are the Tyson Fury fans going to manifest in the UK? Why isn't Frank lobbying for this homecoming fight? He's contracted to have one more fight on ESPN, Tyson Fury. That's what he said. And he said the Wilder fight took a lot out of him. Is he going to get out of the game? I don't blame him for getting out of the game. I don't blame him at all. But what's new? He always wants to go missing after he's had a good win, doesn't he? He doesn't really want to commit to back-to-back fights. You know, like just agree straight away to fighting Dillian. Yeah, it's just a matter of negotiating the terms, the purses, the location, and get the fight on. That's never likely with Tyson Fury. Never likely. And that's one of the things I don't like about him. Everything with this Tyson Fury and Wilder is their fan-friendly media or their promoters talking about they would have beat Ali, they would have beat this guy, they would have beat that guy. Everything is what they would do.
Call y'all the woulda kids, never there when it jump off, but always talking about what y'all woulda did.
Wilder would knock out AJ, and they're talking about Wilder like he's some phenomenal fighter. Apart from the knockdown, what part of his game, apart from power, can be compared to Ali? His footwork, his boxing acumen, his gas tank? None of these things. Ali used to run on the road like a proper boxer in them boots. Wilder doesn't do that. What, Wilder's got a better chin than Ali? What, Wilder could have took George Foreman's big right hands? So all this Tyson Fury would do this to Ali, and Wilder is such an ultimate competitor. Where were the skills in there comparable to Muhammad Ali that would rank him that high up there? Now I know Wilder and Fury fans believe they're so great, but even they surely can't believe they can do time travel and go back in time and fight Muhammad Ali, Sonny Liston, or George Foreman. But you know what they can fight? They can fight their peers in their era. They can fight Usyk. They can fight Dillian Whyte. They can fight Anthony Joshua. They should all fight each other. Just like Ali did in his period, Foreman, Joe Louis, Sonny Liston was a champion for a short time. But you know, when he was a contender, he fought everybody relevant. Why doesn't Tyson Fury want to do that? And why don't those who think he's so great want him to do that? At this point, I really want him to retire. I mean, he doesn't need to do more. He's got enough fans boosting him up as the greatest ever. Just retire now, so the real fighters can challenge for undisputed and challenge each other and do it properly. Just retire. Him and Wilder, just retire and go on tour with each other saying how you're greater than any heavyweights that ever existed. Just retire and go away. Now, all the people who are riding hard for Deontay Wilder, they want to tell us how great Tyson Fury is now. So he went from being a cheat in their eyes to now being an all-time great. They can't beat Fury in the ring. They know this now. So the second option is to tell everybody how great Tyson Fury is and therefore try and elevate Deontay Wilder for being so brave for fighting him. Pathetic. Well, at least it's a little better than telling us how great Luis Ortiz was for all them years.
Call y'all the woulda kids, never there when it jump off, but always talking about what y'all woulda did.
What is the deal with all this pay-per-view talk with DAZN? Is it just talk? So we're going to be paying pay-per-views on top of the subscription? You know, like I've read in newsletters that there won't be no secret charges, or, you know, like you'll pay your subscription and it will stay that way until it runs out. Then obviously they can keep the subscription at the same price next time around, or maybe put a few more pounds on it. Eddie Hearn said that pay-per-view will soon be dead, and that sounded good. That sounded good. But what's the truth though? You know, with Canelo going over to Fox to fight Caleb Plant, that's the only way you could get the undisputed fight done. It's no surprise really, is it, that they couldn't, well, let's not say yet because it hasn't happened, but it wouldn't be no surprise if they can't back up this pay-per-view is dead and we're not going to go the pay-per-view route. It wouldn't be no surprise. But, you know, it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to work out. They're just not getting enough people to sign up. They're just not getting enough people. Mikey Garcia versus Martin Sandor, that's on DAZN this weekend. It would be of interest to some boxing fans, mainly Mexican and Spaniards. Main event is 4:20 a.m. I don't know what the undercard is, and I'm not rushing to look because, you know, Eddie Hearn says the Spanish kid Sandor can fight. But I wanted to see Regis Prograis against Mikey Garcia. If not this fight, perhaps they could serve it up a little later. And I believe they had first refusal to get Prograis to be a DAZN fighter, but they've let this Probellum get hold of him. I'm not impressed with that. I'm not impressed with that at all. But now I start thinking about that fight. Eddie said DAZN didn't want to pay to make it. Well, they will make it if we have to pay pay-per-view for it. And thinking about it now, that's the type of fight they're going to make pay-per-view. Now, don't get it confused. They've done some really good cards, domestic cards on DAZN recently. But you got to look outside of what your interests are. A lot of people don't care about British domestic cards. Let's talk about the top-end World Championship fights. What fights are we going to get for our £7.99? What are we going to get then? We really have to question that. Usyk and AJ rematch. No, they're going to make us pay pay-per-view for that. You know, like the DAZN subscribers, we've supported Canelo all the way through his attempt to be undisputed at 168. And now Fox have got the final piece of the jigsaw against Caleb Plant. They've got it. If you're in America, that's another $80 out of your pocket or whatever. Paying for pay-per-views. Not dismissing the fight at all, but we'll probably get Roman Gonzalez Estrada, the rubber match, in terms of elite fighters on DAZN that we won't have to pay pay-per-view for. Fighters who don't really command massive purses.
Because of the backlash, do you think DAZN will look at it and think and decide against introducing it? Or if not, is it as early as maybe AJ Usyk 2? If they were to win the rights, that's the first fight, which is a pay-per-view.
If they're going to get fights like AJ Usyk and White against Fury, they will have to have pay-per-view functionality on their platform, quite frankly. So if you see those fights on DAZN, and again, this is a question for DAZN, I would expect to see them in that model, but not the fights that you consistently see on Sky pay-per-view. Give you an example. And what Sky are playing at the moment? Chris Eubank against Liam Williams is a £20 pay-per-view that will be coming to you soon on Sky. Right? That is a pay-per-view that is a DAZN Saturday night, fight night, all day long. We're taking off the fights from pay-per-view that you consistently moaned around and delivering them with a much more cost-effective value for money option. And that is what we'll continue to do.
Come on, Eddie, don't try and bullshit us. If Eddie was still on Sky, he would try to make Chris Eubank versus Liam Williams pay-per-view. Just like Sky would try. Most of us who have purchased DAZN subscriptions, maybe in our ignorance, we always thought that you drive up the amount of people to sign up, and then when you get a considerable subscriber base, the desired target is, then you shouldn't have to pay pay-per-view. But obviously, I don't think people want to watch boxing like that. What's the number? 600,000? That's actually a success for Wilder and Fury. Was it just under 600? But this is supposed to be the classic heavyweight trilogy, the way some people are talking about it. These 3 fights were designed to be the leverage tactics to take the A-side position over Anthony Joshua. What a played out, antiquated scenario that appears to be now. But they can't even get nowhere near the Mayweather numbers that he was doing, and these are heavyweights. I just don't think people want to watch boxing like that. So Richard Schaefer and Probellum, they've got Lewis Ritson, they've got Ricky Burns, Badu Jack, Regis Prograis, Paul Butler, who they're going to have taken on John Rio Casimiro. I don't know how the triangle theory is going to work out, because Zolane Tete did a deconstruction on Paul Butler. That was quite a few years back, though. And obviously, Casimiro done a destruction job on Zolane Tete way over 2 years back. Tete hasn't been in the ring since. Probellum have hooked up with Yvonne Michelle. That will cover Canada. I bet Sam Jones regrets handing over Joe Joyce to Frank Warren. He would have loved to have took them to Probellum, and so does Richard Schaefer. But Sam Jones has joined the team as talent relations for the UK. Probellum. I don't really get the name. Basically, they've hooked up a deal with Wasserman Boxing. They've signed Anito Donaire. They've got some decent fighters like Donaire and Badu Jack, but perhaps on their last legs. Though Anito seems like he's got a little something going on. He's still got a belt, hasn't he? He beat that French kid the other day. It looks like Cali Sowland is happy about the inclusion of Probellum. And, you know, I'm not shocked that somebody's trying to get something going in Germany. Germany used to have a thriving boxing market, you know, with Darius Mikuchelski, Henry Maske, Marcus Bayer, and a few other fighters too, man. Like Arthur Abraham is based out of there, and even he's saying that the recent developments for Probellum could revive German boxing. Chris Eubank Jr.'s fight 2 weeks ago was called off. He was supposed to be the headliner on the card, which David Avanesian ended up headlining. Well, is he headlining tomorrow on this Sky card that's going to be held in Newcastle? Got Hughie Fury versus Christian Hammer. It's going to be a very tough fight for Hughie. Very, very tough. Savannah Marshall, she defends her WBO middleweight title. And Eubank versus his opponent, yeah? I was looking at Sporting Icons video and I said, what the fuck have you written the title? Because it looks like a different word if you're not focused in on what his name is. His name is WANIK, but if you take out the I, it looks like something else, right? WANIK Arjan, if that's how you pronounce it. He's tall, 6'2". He didn't look in tremendous shape to me though. You know, it looked like that body isn't ready to stand up to heavy punishment at the weigh-in. But you never know. You never know. He's only been beaten once, and that's via stoppage. He has 28 wins, 11 knockouts. And he was calling Chris EUBANK all types of PUSSY, and there's a whole load of talking being done. So we'll see if he's got it. But you know, EUBANK's brother died in June. I don't know how tight they are, but when his fight got cancelled the other week, I was thinking, I'm quite glad his fight got cancelled, because I'm not sure if even he knows if he's in the right mental space to fight, because going by what he was saying online, Sebastian's death affected him pretty bad. And we're talking, what, 5 months back, if that? It's not that long. But then again, maybe the ring is just what he needs now to help him get over the loss. Who knows? I saw his dad on breakfast television earlier this week, and Richard Madeley asked him about how he's coping with the death of his son. And you know, EUBANK Senior didn't break down, but he said the loss, it hurts. Of course it hurts. You know, his son was a very productive individual, but he said his spirit is still with him. No matter what, his spirit is still with him. It was quite moving. It was quite moving. But that's not why Chris was on Good Morning Britain. He was advertising the Trilogy tour, which is going to be him and Nigel Benn taking the stage for the first time ever to talk about their rivalry, their 2-fight rivalry. They have announced a historic 20-date tour. Live on stage, they will reveal the truth about their fierce rivalry, the real ferocity of their 2 boxing duels, their subsequent lives and successful careers. EUBANK won the first fight in 1990, taking Benn's WBO middleweight title. The second fight took place in 1993 at Old Trafford, Manchester United's football ground. That was a unification. Benn had the WBC super middleweight title and EUBANK had the WBO. It ended up being a draw. Apparently EUBANK got mugged after he left the Good Morning Britain show. Somebody took his Louis Vuitton bag. He said he was stunned. He said he couldn't have known who I was because he wouldn't have tried it. He was just looking at the prize. He continued, I thought he must have been the country's most brazen crook. It's a sign of the times. They don't care about confronting someone like me. So nobody's immune. So how did he get away? Did he have a knife? Maybe he was just too quick. EUBANK is 55. He's in good shape. I don't know how that went down. It's desperate times out there. Scheduled for the 27th of November, Ryan Garcia was supposed to fight JOJO Diaz for his WBC interim belt. But Ryan suffered a hand injury, needs surgery, blah, blah, blah. I want to thank all my fans and this and that. We'll be back in 2022. JOJO Diaz, he called him a PUSSY. He's skeptical that Ryan is injured at all, and who wouldn't be? Then the last part of the equation, Devin Haney calls out JOJO to step up to the plate and actually use that interim belt to invoke his mandatory challenge for the full strap. Now, Diaz is being backed into a corner, but no doubt his fan base are going to make all types of excuses how Devin is boring and doesn't sell, but JOJO don't sell himself. But look, Devin might not have a contract with DAZN anymore. And you know something? Even though he didn't resign with them, I think of it like this. He might think, well, that's my decision. I want to be a free agent. If DAZN really valued Devin as a commodity who could drive up the subscriber numbers on the app, they would have went all out to secure his autograph on a contract to keep him there. DAZN don't really care if they've got a full-time contract with the guy because they're not obligated to keep him busy and overpay him perhaps. Eddie's not concerned about it either. I mean, he's a free agent, but what is really opening up for Devin in terms of good fights? Nothing. It's made no difference. Now, hopefully, if he can keep the belt, something will open up, but he's in a division where all the top American 135-pounders from Tank to T.O., he don't want to fight Loma, Ryan, JOJO, have I missed anyone out? Are all reluctant to fight each other. I want to big up to all my people on Twitter, like Devin said, let's make it happen. December the 3rd. Ellie113 said, why don't the WBC order it? Yep. Somebody underneath him said, champion calling out his mandatory again. Insane. Yeah, it's a crazy situation. And you see, there you go. Someone underneath him. For what? So you can run for 12 rounds against Diaz. Now, let me just say this. If you didn't see Devin's last performance against Linares, where he was going all out to knock Linares out, and if you didn't see him against Gamboa, Devin doesn't run. He doesn't run. I don't know why. I don't know why some of you, when you're trying to protect either your white fighter or your Mexican fighter, you want to call certain black fighters runners. And I'm calling you out, saying it as it is. Because to shame you is the only way I feel I can at least attempt to discourage you from saying this nonsense. JoJo is his mandatory. And his buddy Ryan was also his mandatory. See, everybody else is saying, well, look, JoJo needs to take this fight. He's backed into a corner. But then again, he's going to have mugs like that talking about how exciting JoJo is and how boring Devin is, and he doesn't sell. Although, what has JoJo ever sold? And this is why they don't need to take the fight. I tell you what, DAZN, you should resign Devin. At least he's trying to fight. But before I pay any pay-per-view, you're going to have to get rid of certain fighters or certain promotional outfits before I resubscribe. I'll keep my subscription until this one runs out, but I'm not going to be tolerating this shit from JoJo and RYRY. For what it's worth, Fight Hype just broke the news that Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos will be on November the 27th at Madison Square Garden. Eddie Hearn is just waiting to iron out a few formalities, and he'll be announcing it soon, according to Lance Pugmire. Well, I assume they're not going to use the pay-per-view platform to cover that on DAZN, so we should get that inclusive with our subscriptions. Famous last words. Peace.